In today's episode of Busted, I am going to speak to another citizen voice from Manipur. I am joined by Mr. Mang Kipgen, who works in the corporate sector. He's from Manipur. His immediate family was impacted by the recent violence that took place in the state. Thank you so much, Mr. Kipgen, for joining me here. I'm looking forward to the conversation with you because the idea is to bring clarity to my viewers. And
Yeah.
welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
So, I'm going to start with asking you the very basic question first about the conflict, which is being touted, presented as a conflict between the valley and the hill tribes. Now, what, according to you, is the reason for this conflict? One narrative is that the Kuki community has been militarized over the years, and therefore, this is an armed rebellion against the ruling government.
Okay. So I think the one thing common that we've seen and heard ever since this conflict have started is narratives that has been popularized, and I think that's going to become the most common English language English word. So just to not to rebuke, but just to respond to that is when you say armed community. Uh, Now, I fail to understand that how a community can be armed, right? When when you don't even have the means to be armed, and when you say that they're being armed, essentially, history of Manipur has always had and still has insurgent groups, right? Be it from both the communities or all the communities that are there in Manipur, right? Obviously, the entire insurgency group was started by the majority community, right? They spearheaded the initial militancy rise there and so forth. Then obviously people started picking arms, but then there were always the armed groups. Now, to say that the community has been armed, and I think that's a wrong terminology used against the community. If you're saying a segment of the armed community of, or a segment of the armed group of a community is rising, that's a different piece. But then I don't think you can generalize that a community has been armed.
No, not the entire community, but a segment of it is militarized, and let me tell you the entire thing openly, that the narrative is around how the forces from across the border, Manipur being a border state, are supporting, sponsoring drug trade, and in order to maintain that entire drug route or the drug network, the community is being also supplied with arms to protect themselves and to ensure that nothing disturbs this arrangement. That is where the argument
Right.
is coming from.
So, if the history of Manipur, if you look back in the mid to the early 80s, drugs has always found its way into the core fabric of the lives of youngsters in Manipur. Drugs have been a menace to the society, and irrespective of which community you belonged, if you happen to have come or be part of the 80s, there was no way you would have seen your friends or some of the kids or youngsters from that generation not being affected by the drugs. Now, to say that one community is being armed so that the drugs can be, rather so that's the business propagation of the drug trafficking can be safeguarded. And I think that is totally wrong to say a community, because Manipur, as you know, has always been infested by drugs and drug addicts, and irrespective of which community you belong. And there's this interview, if you've seen it, on the 4th of August, given by an ex-cop, Miss Brenda, on NTT, interview, wherein she has stated, and again, just to give a background, she was also suspended from her job because she had got the transportation of drugs that was happening place, and which she had duly reported. And obviously, if you look at her interview, she is very clearly stated who is the patron and who is driving this entire drug cartel. It's Biren Singh, and
Hmm.
that's why he's got her suspended as well.
Hmm.
And
Are
that
you
is
saying, that it is unfair to categorize or unfair to single out the Kuki communities for being responsible, for being involved in drug trade across segments, that menace spreads across segments in Manipur? That's the point you're making. It's not an exclusive preserve or exclusive domain of one community. If at all the drug menace has affected the state, it has affected everyone. And the Kuki
it
community is
has.
also not immune to it. I understand, but again, to understand the genesis of this problem, and the other narrative that is, of course, being perpetuated is that there is a demography change because of the large scale immigration from across the border. The minority communities, the Kukis being one of them, have increased in leaps and bounds, disproportionately increased in numbers, and that has become a point of conflict, a point of insecurity for the majority Métis, because they can see that their numbers are fast catching up with our numbers. Is that another reason for this kind of hostility?
Um, no, so it's sad that when only narratives are used to base one storyline without really having to check data and figures. And if you look back, the two census that, if for comparison, right, the 1901 census to 2011, obviously there were no census done post that. 2011, and if you look at what was the Kuki community or the Kuki population, it was 14.5 in 1901, and in 2011 it is barely, it's just moved up 1.5%, which is 16%, which is the leaps and bounds. I have no idea, and I'm no one who's authorized or have the authority on that, but you have to look at numbers, you have to look at data when you are going to be saying a statement or giving a statement such as that, because that statement is what's going to be felt by everyone across, and then they will start using that narrative, and then it becomes a folklore without any base. And we have to stop that. We have to stop that. All the issues that has happened so far is because we've just been spreading false information, passing on, you know, and incorrect information. And I'm saying this, not only for a particular community, but the reason why we're not able to now see sense of commonality is because our narratives have been so diverse towards the hate that is being sought, uh, amongst the people against the two communities. So all that I'm referring back to is, and these are data points that has been referred over interviews after interviews, right? Not that I also spend time looking for census data to make sure what I'm saying is right, but then I've also done a cross checking just to look at that. Yes, if you are saying that there is, because some of the Kuki politicians have also gone on national TV to say that the impact of the Myanmar junta's brutality has seen some of the Kuki community, migrating, right? Not only to Manipur but to Mizoram as well. But that I don't think that is something that you can count it as leaps and bounds. I mean, then there has to be an indicator, and you're talking about years and years of inputs, and I think we have military expertise, intelligence to know what is the level, what is the impact of border crossing, and for a nation such as ours, I think we have the capability to get a sense of how, because you're looking at a very sensitized border areas, which
Yes.
typically is man, and it's we have all the armed forces there, so to use a scale to say that it's leaps and bounds, that it's pretty much like the Israelites crossing into Israel. I mean, that's what you call leaps and bounds. I don't know. I
So
may be
you are
wrong in
saying,
my
this is a fair
interpretation here.
point that you're making, that if there is a porous border, if there is infiltration, what was the government of the day doing? Isn't it their responsibility to check? And you are saying that there is no record, there is no statistics, there is no data to suggest. But the fact of the matter is, would you agree that there's been brewing tension, there's been simmering tension between the two communities because of uh, you can say, land and jobs and reservation, and it is who gets a piece of the pie. That sort of a internal squabble is going on, that who is going to get a larger piece of the pie. And because of that, the Métis, they decided to do a pushback, because they believe they are the original, they are the indigenous people. They welcome the indigenous Kukis, but they do not like to welcome anyone who has come from across the border or even from another state. So once that pushback started is when this tension flared up. Is that how it happened?
Um, so my response would be based around my understanding. And if you look back at the history of Manipur, you look back, it's with the accession of Manipur into the government or into India, or even before that, the valley was predominantly what was the Meitei's kingdom, which was about 700 square miles. Like that's essentially was their domain, and beyond that, the hills were always with the tribals, right? Now, to say that they were the indigenous people, and then the tribals were not, and I think that's a false comment or a narrative being used, because as the with the formation of Manipur, obviously, historically, you know how British have you know brokered or brought about small provinces, or to create a more administrative ease. So therefore the hills and everything were part of what became to be called Manipur, right? So to say that they were the indigenous people, and I think that's they were indigenous, but they were not the only indigenous people, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Now, that being said, the whole thing about the land, and the tribals taking away the jobs. See, historically, as a child growing up there, you'll find that most of the hill people who looked towards education, who looked towards a better life, would come down to Imphal, right? And this goes for my father as well, right? While we were chiefs, my great grandfather, my grandfather, they were all chiefs in the villages, but they needed education, right? So with whatever earnings I had, my dad, they made sure that my dad and his brothers found education here in Imphal, right? And for that, I think, Imphal played a big role. So with that education, if you look back at all the tribals, our only way, the way we've the way our genetics, the DNA is built, most tribals, you'll find that they would always look towards education. Therefore, with education, you go towards administrative line of career, because that's where the trajectory is with education. And the majority community most preferred the being in business, because obviously that's everyone has a different acumen and different line of and interest of business. Now, the whole thing to say that the Kukis or the tribals are taking away the jobs had nothing to do with any thought process to say, hey, now, as Kukis, we will all go and therefore, take away all the jobs for everyone or for all the majority people in Manipur. And I think that's totally wrong narrative of putting it, because these are people who've aspired. And if you look at, there are also other people from the majority community who are also there in the administrative line of business, right? In line of services. So it doesn't stop them. And now the whole thing that has triggered is, I don't think there was always, because the drug was something that had festered the need for angst between the two community. I don't know. I've never seen that. I was there till March this year, and my only friends there are people from the majority community, right? And none of us ever had that inclination of this was coming, right? This whole thing. So to say that this is something that's been festering over a period of time, politically, maybe yes, but at a layman's level, I don't think that's something that we have seen or looked at each other. And that is
So then
something
let
which
me ask
I
you, since you brought up the politics of the day, this is again another narrative that it is actually the ruling party, the BJP in Manipur, Mr. Biren Singh trying to consolidate his vote bank, and therefore he wanted a solid grip over the Meitei community. even to the at the cost of segregating the Kuki community. He wanted to consolidate his vote bank so that he could return to power. The other side is also saying, other side, they are also saying that the Kuki community is being played by the opposition parties, which is why the video of the naked parade actually was under the wraps for over 2 or 3 months, probably, before it was very conveniently released before the monsoon session of parliament to corner the government. So these are the political narratives around what is happening in Manipur. So would you blame the political class that somewhere they are fishing in troubled waters and ensuring that this strife never ends because somewhere it is serving political ends?
No, so politics has always had vested interest, right? Now, irrespective of how you look at it, the entire power sharing, so if you so call it, in Manipur, you have out of the 60 seats, you have 40, which is for the for people from the valley, which essentially is taken by all the majority community. Then you have the other 20, which is shared between the various tribal you know uh, clans or community across the hills. Now, whatever you do, no matter what, you will always have your majority because obviously, as a thumb rule, with a 40% seat over six in a 60, that itself is a majority. So I don't know why that should be a cause for you to be insecure. The only thing is, you as a government, if you know you're doing something wrong and you feel people will be against you, then you would do something to incite, to get people to come towards you, and it's so easy to play that divisive politics, right? And this is what we're saying, right? Now, and you would have also seen the news that some of the ministers from the majority community who have opposed the CM, their house have been burned, right? So if you look at that angle, and for me, the way I look at it is it the people? Don't blame the people. It is the ones who are holding the power, right? It is the people who are at the power who are doing things for their own vested purpose now, and that's typically politics. And again, as a layman, that's how we see it. That's how I look at it, and that obviously led to this sorry state of affair.
Mhm. So now who is to lose from all of this? Because what is happening right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there is a complete segregation. The valley people cannot go to the hills, the hill people cannot come to the valley. The young men of each community is guarding the border area so that there is no intrusion. Can this arrangement be sustained? Wouldn't the cookies have more to lose? Because after all, the entire resources, opportunities, everything is in the valley. So if they are prohibited
No,
from entering the
yeah.
valley, they will lose out more, isn't it?
No, so I think the way I would look at it is, it's not only, yes, the people from the hills will lose out more. And I can tell you right now, I'm seeing the burden and the pain of it because I have half the family who were from Imphal. I had to evacuate them to Guwahati, right? So there's half my family members for which their entire means of livelihood has been the business that we run back in Imphal, right? And obviously, you know, that was a source of income for them as well as for the village, because the village belongs to us. It's my dad's village, and for the people, we have to look after them. So now that has become a challenge for us. But it also means that with the kind of law and order situation in Imphal, even the people in Imphal itself are also suffering, right? So in both ways, this is not sustainable at all. But, and again, I'm saying this purely from people who've been affected by this. While I've been, not immediately affected. Yes, my sister-in-law's house was the first house burned down in our colony, right, on the third night. No life was lost, right? So that being said, the entire modus operandi of what we're trying to see of sustainability is not going to work out for either side. But like I said again, for people who've been affected directly, will they go back to Imphal? I don't think so, because their house have been burned down. I don't know where they will restart all over again. Will they get their jobs back in the government? People who've been in the government service, I doubt that will happen. If they go, also they'll always be looking over their shoulders, right? So what is that trust that we should bring back? And that's the first thing, right? For people to say, okay, enough is enough, let's go back to our normalcy. There has to be a trust. There has to be someone that all the community can look up to, right? And I after this interview, probably, I'm also going to be targeted, but he's not for targeting people who speaks against him, the government, the CM, right? He cannot continue, right? He's the BJP poster boy, unfortunately, right? And I shouldn't be saying this because I could also lose my job, right? But then I'm just speaking purely for the people of Manipur, and I'm not speaking for my community alone, because for everyone to go back to their life, to bring back normalcy, someone needs to feel safe. I know that I will not be harmed. How do you do that?
So
How
you
do
are
you get to
saying right
that?
now everyone is simply busy protecting their lives. They're simply busy saving their skin. The
Yeah, so
of
just
going back to livelihood, going back to normalcy is still far away, because right now you're busy just simply protecting yourself from danger, from immediate danger. Is that what the situation is?
absolutely. So my village is at the front line, right? It's the fringe, right?
Mm,
And my entire siblings who are left behind, they have a roster that they need to be at the border, right? How do they do that, right? I mean, these are people who've never held arms in their lives before. My, cousins, people from the village, we all have the responsibility of guarding ourselves now.
mm.
With what? With those .22 rifles and with those homemade rifles. I don't know where the sophisticated weapons are being mentioned about. We're just, and these are all homemade stuff that we're just relying on because all our licensed guns were confiscated by the government in the month of February this year.
So you're saying the hill tribes are actually left to fend for themselves, primarily the Kuki.
Absolutely.
The young
And
men in the
that
community are doing the job. They cannot depend on the state government. They cannot depend on the paramilitary. They have no one to turn to. So therefore, they are simply doing the job of
no,
protecting their own people
so
right now.
so so if you look at it, our our solace and the comfort we've had so far has been the presence of the Assam rifles. They've
Hmm.
always been at the fringe, so they make sure that people don't cross the buffer zone.
Hmm.
At least that way, we feel that safety net, because they know they've see Assam rifle historically they've always been in the hills, so they know where the danger is, right? They know who are the people who are dangerous. And if the army feels that a community is or needs to be safeguarded, then you have to think twice why the army is trying to, I'm not saying they're siding, but why the army is, or why the people look up towards the army, because they have lost trust and faith in the state machinery, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And I won't be ashamed to say that in the beginning, on the 4th of May, I reached out to two of my close friends, one in the BJP, one in the Congress. I said, this is happening. Obviously, I was told this is one side. I said, it can be, but look into it, see it from both the sides. Otherwise, things are going out of hand.
Hmm.
This was on the 4th of May,
Hmm.
right? And all the need of the hour is something that we need to properly look at, because for everyone this is enough. Yeah, there's just so much madness going on, and the longer it goes, it's just going to take more and more time
You
for the
think that
wounds
is
to
not
heal.
being taken seriously enough by the central government? Just quick last answer on whether
Not at all.
lack of
Not
seriousness.
at
If
all.
they wanted to resolve, if they wanted to confiscate all arms and
So
make sure nobody is armed, neither side is armed, then there will be no war.
absolutely,
Why is that so difficult?
absolutely. you so that's a question I think we should ask. The
Yes.
media should ask that question. Why is it so difficult? Why hasn't the prime minister spoken? He only uttered a brief.
Hmm.
When did he utter that? After nearly 90 days,
Hmm. But now he's saying there
right?
is peace. But is this just a calm before
What peace? What peace is he talking about? That's thankfully no one is killing each other. Is that peace? Peace also has to come back with return to normalcy, right? You're
the
living in fear every day. Something can happen. Whenever that happens, oh, there's firing there. But you're saying there is peace.
Hmm.
The two cannot go like that.
Right.
Peace means everyone is back to normalcy. Where is that normalcy there?
Right. Thank you so much for joining me, giving me so much clarity,
No,
giving me
pleasure.
your honest thoughts. Mang Kingpen, thank you so much for joining me today. So that was Voice of a Citizen from Manipur. You heard the perspective of the gentleman on how his community is fending for itself, trying to safeguard the basic life and property. They're far away from resuming normalcy. I will also now bring to you an interaction that I had with someone from the majority community, from the Meitei community. Their narrative is something completely different. They believe that the Kuki community has been radicalized, militarized deliberately by vested interests, but they put the blame solely on forces across the border, and they blame it solely on the drugs and the arms trade, which the Biren Singh government tried to crack down upon, owing to which there was this strong violent reaction from the community, which now, as it turns out, is already very strongly armed, already very well equipped to take up the might of the ruling state government. Let's hear that narrative as well. Here's putting out the other side of the story.